What's the word, y'all? It's Double R the guy tapping in with y'all. So this is the third episode of the Wave podcast. I got a special guest today here, Naru, also known as Ronnie. Man, I actually met this brother at Big Enterprise Plaza. We just ran into each other, one of them universal type of things. And he was like, man, hey, I fuck with your music. You know what I'm saying? I've been fucking with your content for a minute. And he was actually there at the dispensary giving off his pitch for one of his herbs or one of his strains that he was growing. And just listening to him, I'm like, damn, this brother intelligent. You know, I need to tap in with him. Come to find out, we actually knew some of the same people. So we just linked up. After that, I'm like, yeah, this was meant to happen type shit. So, man, this is my brother Ronnie. Naru, man, I appreciate
My
having you here, man.
brother. Yes, I am.
Sir.
Peace, man. Whole time, man. Appreciate you pulling me
Yes,
out, man.
yes, sir. No, I
Coming
had to
by.
bring you on here, bro. Yeah, for those who don't know, he is a grower of all things. He specializes in cannabis, but he also grows other things. So just tell us your story, bro. Give us your background. Let us know, how you grew up, what your childhood was like,
Mm.
and how you enter into this journey of botany.
Indeed. All right. So for the first, I'll say from about 1 to 7 years old, I lived with my great grandfather, my grandmother's older brother, and we called him Papa. And he was Native American. He was real deep into hunting, farming, and basically the main things that he considered what it is to be a man. First, you have to be able to defend yourself, provide for yourself, and shelter yourself. And so, what does that look like? Knowing how to farm, knowing how to hunt, and knowing how to build a house. And so, once that slowly but surely started to set in on me, I found that my favorite part about everything that we did was the farming part, and I took on to it pretty good. I used to get the name Green Thumb, and yeah, man, my papa he passed about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and long story short, it was that beginning stages because I was born with diabetes and eczema, and so my papa and his wife they would like make certain concoctions. I see them go in the garden, grab some stuff, then go in the kitchen, mix it all together, then I drink it or they rub it on my skin, and it wouldn't be too itchy no more, or I'll be able to sleep. You know what I mean?
That's
And it'd be
dope.
like,
That's
hmm.
dope.
And as a kid, you don't understand the importance of it. You don't even know what's going on. You just know I was uncomfortable and they made me comfortable, right? And it's like that nurturing thing. And so, with that being said, I grew up in the farm, man. And my ninth grade year, I started playing football at a high school level. Now, I was playing football before that. Started playing football at about 6 years old. But I understood the power of the reduction of inflammation. So in football, we run into each other a lot. We bashing each other and it's like it destroys the frontal lobe. And as young children, our frontal lobe hasn't even properly developed. Therefore, we're destroying the building blocks on what we would then have in the future. And so I found that cannabis consumption reduced the inflammation markers that most or no drugs can pass the blood brain barrier because there's no blood in the brain. But when you consume cannabis, you reduce the inflammation in the brain, which is only seen if you have invasive surgery. And so that was the key indication of telling me that I need to go back to my roots because I started consuming cannabis and I didn't understand that what it was really for. I just knew I was uncomfortable and it made me comfortable again. And so once I dived back into the books, I was like, this is all seems familiar to me, right? And so growing herbs and stuff like that, I never really stopped growing them. I was always growing them, but I was only growing fruits and vegetables because I just had to go vegan because that seemed to be the cure to my problem. Or I wouldn't say cure, but I had the diabetes was debilitating to the point where being in high school trying to play football with a pump and having to get insulin and stuff like that, getting babied by your coaches or whatever, it then changes your perception. And so I thought to myself, either I'm a live on my, I would rather live on my feet than down my knees, right? And so essentially, instead of going like, well, I'm just have to live with this forever, I just was blessed to come across a dude named Dr. Sabi. And some of his people actually from Detroit, and that's what made it like a close proximity. And he had said, "Ain't no such thing as disability, it's just mucus or whatever." And I was like, "Well, I hope it's true because I'm about to try because there is no cure to diabetes essentially." And so I graduated. By the time I turned 18, I no longer had diabetes. No, I was actually 19 when I didn't have diabetes no more. I had went vegan my 17th birthday. and it really changed everything. I felt better about life. I was able to see everything a little bit more clear. And growing up as a kid, being around older people, it was really important because I grew up as an old, so that was how I was just naturally out the womb. And so being around those older people really cultivated the yearn for wisdom, like to know more or to want to learn about something. Really scratched the itch that couldn't none really scratch.
No, that's deep. So you pretty much your start began with your grandparents
Hmm.
and while you was younger. That's dope because a lot of people don't get to experience not only their grandparents but to learn skills from their grandparents. So I think that that's dope that you was able to see that from early on.
Mm.
So what for somebody who just starting off growing plants, might have a couple plants in the house or wanting to start to grow their own garden, where would you start them off at? What
Mm.
basic starting points would you?
The number one most commonly grown indoor house herb or fruit, I would actually say either tomatoes or like a herb like mint, parsley, or thyme, lemongrass, things that don't really take too much baby, and something you can set, make sure all the property's ready and right, and walk away from, and it'll still be able to produce something. And so I would recommend tomatoes, mint, thyme, parsley, all the seasonings that you use. Just try it fresh one time and see if it don't change your perception on freshness and dry, right? Because we only use the drying to preserve things. And so if you're growing it fresh, you don't have to preserve it. And so essentially you get a more active flavoring from all your herbs.
Okay, hold on one second. Ronnie, just bring your mic just a little bit closer. I want to make sure they hearing it. Kind of bring it down a little bit and tilt it upward like this. Yep. Okay.
Copy.
Yep. All right. So what are some common mistakes that people make when watering their plants?
They water with water that is too cold or too warm. So imagine you taking a shower. When you take a shower, you want it to be comfortable, essentially. You don't want it to be too hot or too cold. Same thing with the plants. Now, we can drink cold water or we can drink hot water like tea, and it doesn't affect us in extreme ways, but it does the plants. And
Mm,
so having a thermometer to make sure your water is approximately between 75 and 78 degrees, almost guaranteeing success when water. And overwatering happens a lot also depending on the medium, because in soil you can water and the top of the soil is dry and it will seem dry, but you would have to dig your finger in a little bit to make sure that it's actually dry, because you can dig your finger in and right over that first layer is still super wet
mm.
and you end up overwatering.
Okay. I was going to ask you before I even asked that question. Like you said, to start off growing like seasonings or certain things that people are used to using in the kitchen. But I would think that I didn't even think vegetables at first. I was thinking, do you think people should start with regular plants that don't grow anything first?
Yeah, that's essentially, yeah. Basically saying that without saying it, because like parsley, thyme, mint, lemon balm, all those are essentially things that grow without, you know what I mean?
Okay, okay. You talking about the actual? See, I'm thinking fruit still. You said seasoning.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, as far as region, like we got people on the West Coast, we got people in the North, East, South. Based on the regions, give like three or four, for each region that we should grow.
Mm. So if you're in Michigan, I would heavily recommend growing things like actually that's mycelium. Michigan, we good for fruiting fruits, right? So like tomatoes, apples and stuff like that. And we got great soil over there closer to Ohio. That's where you get good tomatoes and no, good potatoes from. But regionally, the US is known for being able to grow essentially anything anywhere, right? And so now don't get me wrong, you can have things that like a warmer climate and you in a cooler place in the US, but with human intervention, you can then control your climate and it really doesn't matter. But based on where things naturally grow great at, is that's simply based on the temperature and the humidity thing. It's not necessarily a region thing, because it's only a slight difference in plants when we talk about different soils and stuff like that. For example, if you was to grow a tomato in Florida soil and you was to grow a tomato in Michigan soil, they would taste like the soils or the respective microbials in the soils. And so those microbials is what really give you the difference. But it's not necessarily a different place, because you can go to Florida and get their soil and then
Mm.
you grow it, and now your tomatoes taste like Florida tomatoes because you was able to maintain the same humidity and temperature.
So how much of a difference does me taking Like, okay, so let's say we take some Florida soil, bring it up to here to Michigan, grow tomatoes in it. How much of a difference is it going to be because it's in Michigan, even though it has the same soil?
It's going to be a great difference because those microbials, one, what we feed our plants here may not be accessible for those plants. And so, what will be fed naturally in those areas is what we would try to strive for. But essentially, it's still a way to maintain the microbial life by feeding the microbials. And long as you can feed the microbials, you can cultivate more. And so, you can take that soil and then cultivate it for about 2, 3 months, and then use that soil to cultivate more soil, essentially making more quote unquote Florida microbials.
Mm.
Hmm.
Now, you talked about the differences between the temperature and the water, which is I I would focus more on what the water is, but I never even thought to think about temperature. Now, as far as soils and pots, it seemed like the soil is the most important thing. So starting off, what type of pot should people use based on if they growing fruits or seasonings or herb, like, and what type of soil
Mm.
should you start off with? Are there pro level soils that need to be treated a certain way? Is it rookie
Yeah.
soils?
So the first question, well, I'm gonna start with the last one. When it comes to soils, the difference in rookie soils and pro soils is pro soils usually don't have nothing in them, and they're clean to where the pros can add what they want to put in there,
Mm,
right? Whether it's cultivate them naturally, whether it's adding artificial nutrients or salt-based nutrients. And the newbie level, they have nutrients in there, and they tell you that you can grow these type of plants at this level, and you'll be able to get a nice quote unquote comeback, or this is the probable yield you should expect. And so, with that being said, what was the question before the soil?
um, what type of pots?
Oh, yes, pot. So, I'm glad you said that. So, when it comes to like strawberries, potatoes, things that grow a certain way, like potatoes grow under the ground, right? Beets grow under the ground, carrots under the ground. And so, technically, we would define these as roots. They're not take fruits, roots, give or take, same difference. And so, you would get a for underground growing plants, you would get a plastic pot, all black plastic pot with holes at the bottom, right? I say
Why?
about 3.5 gallon pot
Why do you say black?
because black holds the heat in and you want to keep that temperature. The most important thing with underground plants is maintaining a higher temperature, and that is what gives you a promoted growth speed. And so, and then it's the strawberries. Now, strawberries grow viney, right? And so, I wouldn't even recommend a pot. I would recommend putting those in a uh, uh, the thing that goes on your house to catch the rain,
The gutter?
the gutter, right? So you'll get you a piece of a gutter and cut it, and then you'll put your strawberry seeds. The strawberries will grow out of it as a vine, and then you see me. And so the probability to increase your yield would be to grow them across a longer space instead of thinking about growing up or how much space you need. Why is more so downward space.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So when it comes to light, how important is light to indoor plants, outdoor plants, and how do you determine if you're giving your plant too much light or not enough light?
So too much light is rare, right? You only really get too much light when your lights. First, the importance of light is the most important. Without light, there is no growth. Without no photosynthesis, there is nothing else happening in that plant. That light is the engine. As soon as that engine turn on, then we can get to running. But
So
until that engine turn on,
what,
it's over.
bro, give a short definition of photosynthesis.
Ah,
Just
the
explain that process.
so photosynthesis is when the light touches the plant. The plant is now able to use that light energy and transfer it into usable energy. Just how we use food. If I was to eat some food, I feel like I have more energy. You put the light on the plant, it has more energy. You can see this when it's nighttime. You can look at the plants, the leaves are linked down. When the sun come out, the leaves lift up. And so that is a key indication of uh, 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 energy is being moved.
Okay. So how do you know if you're getting too much light or not enough
So
light?
too much light, you get something which is called light bleaching. So usually light bleaching and burning, but burning can usually come from burning more commonly comes from a fan or too much air on a specific area, not direct light. But direct light, I say you will get albino like spots on your plants, right? So you at the tip of your plant that's too close to the light, where it's too close, it'll turn completely white or it'll just brown up and crisping, right? And so too much light is extremely bad, but too much light can be good if you have enough temperature control and humidity control because plants still need to eat.
Right. No facts. Okay. Now, as far as repotting plants, what is the purpose of repotting a plant, and when should somebody repot a plant? And if you do pot it, what type of soil should you use? Should you be using the same soil? Should you be
Mm. So with repotting, you usually repot when you plan on having a plant alive for a longer amount of time. So a 1 gallon pot is probably about a month. A 2.5 gallon pot probably about 3 months. 3.5 gallon pot about 6 months. And so if your plant is not going to live for 6 months, or you want to grow it bigger than it usually grows, then you'll go for the 3.5 gallon pot. But if your plant only going to live about 2.5 months, you can go for the 2 gallon pot. And the only time you transfer up is when your roots it get quote unquote root stunted. When your roots hit the end of the pot and they start to fold back on each other. Now it can work uh as a double-edged sword, because that then causes the roots to strengthen, and so that would be prime time to transplant. But if you wait too long, you get root stunted, and then you have negative effects. And
mm,
so when you do transfer up, you when you transfer your pot or your plant from a different pot, depending on if it's going in the flowering, like for example, if it was a tomato plant, I have my growing soil, then I have my flowering soil, and which has a different ratio of the same nutrients. And so if it's a plant that I just want to get bigger or live longer, it's the same nutrients, same soil, just bigger pot. But if it's a transition in the growth pattern, then it's a different ratio of nutrients.
mm. So what are some telltale signs that your roots are overgrowing, or like does that cause a problem, or do the roots are the roots able to contain themselves?
By the time you see a problem, it's too late when it comes to that. So
Mm,
that's where having plastic pots is important, because as a newer grower, when the soil dries up, the root zone slightly shrinks. And so you can look down and push your finger and push the soil to the side, and you'll be able to see if the roots are all the way on the wall or not. And but if your roots get too far on the wall, your roots will start yellowing, and then you will slightly start seeing different deficiencies or toxicities in the plant, because the plant is no longer able to absorb nutrients in a proper way. And so the nutrients that are available may not be in the so you may give it the right amount of nutrients, but it's not able to absorb it, which causes it to have a deficiency, or it absorbs too much of something to account for something else, which then causes the toxicity.
so I know that all plants are different and they require different things, but what would be like three of the number one things that plants need, like outside of sunlight and, as far as the nutrients go?
Proper humidity and airflow. As long as the whatever the plant grows in, the humidity is basically its ability to breathe clearly, right? When you wake up in the morning, it's too dry, and you take a deep breath, you like, I need to drink some water. Humidity too low. You wake up and you take a deep breath, and it's like, I feel stuffy. Humidity too high. But the thing with the plants, they can't change it on their own, and so you need to be able to maintain that humidity from outside to be able to give them the ability to grow without any negative backlash.
So,
Mm.
go ahead.
Oh yeah, and from there you have the airflow. It take about 10 minutes for a plant to absorb all the air around it. And so if you don't have continuous airflow, your plants can literally suffocate.
Mm, okay. So, what would be some telltale signs that your plants are deficient?
Deficiency usually shows depending on what is deficient in. So for example, say if it's deficient in potassium, right? You will get, depending on the plant, you will get purple in stems, you will get uh matte look to your leaves. Instead of them being a glossy, happy looking leaf, it'll be a matte, light absorbing looking leaf. Then you will have burnt tips. It's actually a multitude. So like when it comes to telltale signs, it's a list that you have to go through almost, right? Or it's a list that I go through. That's how I maintain a slightly higher percentage of accuracy. When you go through the checklist, is at the right temperature, the right humidity, the right, because it can be at the wrong temperature, and that's causing it to have a deficiency, right? And so I can fix the temperature and not change nothing with the nutrients, and then it'll fix itself naturally.
Mm,
hmm And so the telltale signs, they usually take a list. So like first, the biggest part of the list, check the temperature, the humidity, the parts per million, or how much is in the water that's not water, and then the EC, or the electric conductivity of the water. How much electricity can this water hold? And once you check all of those things, usually one of those is out of whack before you actually have to go to the nutrients.
okay. So, when it comes to indoor and outdoor plants, when you're trying to prevent pests, what's something that you can do?
hmm
And go over the different type of pests.
Now we got pests like rats, cats eat. herb because it's like catnip. Uh, 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 fruits and vegetables. Ants. You have wingworm. Like there is an unlimited amount of animals. Aphids. Uh, 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 Spider mites. You have gnat flies. You have fungus gnats. You have it's an unlimited number because one thing about America, we're the home of import export. We have bugs from across the world here, which causes a different standing. We have invasive species that are here that are changing the diaspora of our plants. And so, with that being accounted for, the best thing to use is plants because there are plants in the world that bugs know to stay away from because it'll hurt you or they just know it'll make you, it's something bad with them because how they smell. And so, the best pest and bug defendant I would have to say is All Per Plus by Leon. That was one of the best pest prevention system I've ever used. It's a mixture of saffron, rosemary, guaranidol oil, and about two more and they mix those oils together and rose oil. Mix it together with just some water. It's just natural plant oils and water, and you spray it around the plants. You can spray it on the plants, and not have to worry about no negative backlash because it's a lot of stuff out like Azamax. Azamax, you can spray it on your plants to remove aphids or keep it from coming to your plant, but Azamax is deadly to the body. You don't want to be able to consume. You don't want to consume that, right? Because you can grow a whole bunch of tomatoes, but you use the pesticide to keep the bugs off of it. But now you can't even eat it, and that is where the danger comes in. So using something natural gives you the ability to at least make it through your grow and experience the fruits of your labor.
So, what are some like dangerous chemicals you should definitely keep away from your plants?
I would have to say, depending on the type of plant. So, for example, tomatoes, by those being a plant that you eat on the outside with a thin skin, you want to keep anything that you can't pronounce or anything with EDTA or a heavy metal in it because that sinks into the skin and now it's into the plant. And so anything with heavy metals or something you can't pronounce that's not a microbial. If it's artificial, that's usually the key indication that you don't want to consume it because that is the thing that is dangerous to the animals. You don't want it to be dangerous to you. You want it to smell dangerous to the animals.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so with that being said, that changes a bit. But no, yeah.
So I know that there are certain plants that you can grow too, like that will prevent certain pests from coming around, right?
So you can grow citrine. Citrine is good for like mosquitoes and stuff like it's the lemony smell in that off, right? Or yeah, off or the plant itself has a strong lemon scent to it, strong citrusy scent. You can take the plant, rub it on your hands, rub it on your body, and go into the woods and have a reduced effect of mosquito bites or anything that bites. And so when it comes to insects, but you can grow that around, you can grow that in clothes around your garden, and that'll help keep pests away. It's another plant that keeps squirrels away, but I usually just let the squirrels get a few pieces. They're not gonna eat it all. Like, you know what I mean? I look at it like it's paying my 10% to nature.
Giving back. I
Right?
feel
Because
that.
if the squirrels eat it, that means it's good for me to eat,
No
right?
facts. Okay, so now let's get more into the cannabis realm.
Mm.
So what was it like growing your first batch, or like talk about that experience?
Growing my first back was actually very secretive experiment. I was secretly growing cannabis in my mom's house in the closet.
Man, how long you get away with that?
I actually got away with it till I completed the grow.
Damn.
The plant was about the pot was about the size of this book right here.
Mhm.
The plant had to be no more than about 3 inches tall. I took that plant and I realized, it's growing. I had a floodlight. You know that little light with the clamp on the back that you use in the garage and stuff like that. I had one of those connected to a stitching cord, and I taped the stitching cord white with white duct tape so it'd match the color of my the lining on the wall, so you wouldn't really just recognize when you walk in my room. And so I had it completely set up. 3 months went by. I grew a plant that was probably like 4 inches tall with one bud on it, but it was beautiful. It had purple, blue, well, purple pinks. It was astonishing. I had never seen anything like this before.
What kind of strain was it?
I don't know. It was from a seed from a bag of what was called then Reggie Bush, Reginald,
No,
low
wow.
grade.
Damn.
Excuse me. And so with that being said, um, that's when I understood. Also, That's what I understood. It's a difference between low grade cannabis. There is no such thing as low grade cannabis. It's only low grade cannabis growers, right? Because if the quality is low, that's because the grower didn't really do much. Because cannabis naturally grows strong and consumable in nature with no human intervention. This is what we call land races. And so, with that being said, when you add human intervention and the human intervention reduced the natural quality with no human intervention, then we have like, I think you don't know what you're doing, which is destroying the name of the herb. But then we get the good growers, right? So like at the highest level, you got people who grow what is called vegan cannabis, right? Vegan cannabis is plants that are grown with no animal byproducts, like no bone meal, no bat poop, no horse poop, no cow, none of that. It's just straight natural yucca root, different fruits and vegetables being milled and eaten up by worms and stuff like that. That usually goes for about $1,000 an ounce.
Damn.
$16,000 a pound. There's only about 4 or 5 growers, and I think the whole U.S. that can even achieve a high quality of vegan herb that even be worth that. But a lot of people have a more health sense about them. But me personally, that's what I say. I think you should grow it yourself. You know,
No,
that's an elbow in the knee.
no facts. No facts.
hmm
So when did you realize that you were getting good at growing?
When I grew my first plug, I had never seen nothing like it before. I ain't never seen none of the old high time books from my uncle, none of the old TV vlogs on YouTube. It looked like something Wiz Khalifa had. You know what I mean? It looked like something one of the famous rappers had, one of the famous smoker rappers had, and it was like, I never seen nothing like this. And when I clipped it, I didn't dry it, I didn't cure it, none of that. I didn't even get that far in the book. I was reading the book, and once I got to the bud part, I was like, it looked beautiful. I clipped the bud. I ran outside in the backyard, and then I put it in a little pipe that I had got, right? And so what was funny about it, it was like an old school pipe, right?
Hey, you know that's early age smoking. You smoking out the pipe.
With
You
the
can't even,
curve to it,
right.
like
You
I
can't
like
even
an
get no
Englishman,
relos in nothing.
right? Couldn't even get no relos. I don't condone underage smoking. I do not condone underage smoking. Let's start there. But I put it in the pipe, and then I hit it, and it tasted so good. And I was like, oh my! I didn't even know herb could taste like this, and that led me to diving deep into the Indoor Bible by Jorge Cervantes. That was the start and building block of understanding cannabis in its totality and being able to produce it, right? Because they say 90% of people who grow cannabis never make it to the flowering stage. I made it to the flowering stage my first try. I made it to the harvest stage,
No
actually,
facts.
right? And it was like, it wasn't a mix up and mistake. I was reading a book on how to grow the whole time, right? And so that right there led to understanding that why don't more people grow it? Like, I get this saying, this herb come from Cali. Cali don't have a better herb than Michigan. We beat them in multiple Spannabis Cups, cannabis cups. We like, we have the highest quality herb in the United States of America, Michigan. Yes, we do. And so with that being said, if you don't know that, and my herb so fire, dang, bro, where you get this from Cali? Yeah, I got it from Cali. Right?
Man, because you don't know no better. No,
Yeah,
that's crazy. I didn't know
hmm
that. I did
Right.
not know that.
hmm
Okay, so you talking about the Spanibus Cup. Now you placed number 3 in the Spanibus
Mm.
Cup.
Yes,
Now
yes, yes.
talk about the different competitions and the different like what's before the Spanabus Cup, what's after the Spanabus
hmm
Cup. Go
Oh
into
yeah.
that.
So when it comes to competitive growing, right? A lot of people may not know that there is a thing called competitive growing. But in this world, there is always going to be somebody who wants to be better than the next person, right? And so that's why we have the cannabis competitions, right? We have the Cannabis Cup, High Time Cups, we have the Michigan Cups, Oregon Cups, and the Cali Cups, right? So, say for example, you're competing regionally against everybody who in your state, right? That'd be the Michigan Cup. And then it'd be the High Times Cup. Everybody in Michigan competing against everybody in Oregon, or the top dogs in Michigan competing against top dogs in Cali. And then we get what is called the Spannabis Cup. Now, the Spannabis Cup has been going for the last 40 years consecutively in Spain. This is where the big dogs meet. This is where the millionaire teams of people be. There is not going to be one person that's competing like, oh, yeah, I just grew this and I want to compete. No, you got to have a track list and a very powerful product, whether it's a new growing product, new nutrient, new packaging, a new way, a new atomizer on how the pins work, new flower, new concentrate, all of the new and best stuff in the cannabis industry is at the Spannabis Cup. That's where they fight to see who actually has the best. That's where we fight against Asia, Russia, China, Africa. We fight against everybody in the perspective of who's the best. And the Spannabis Cup is where it's at. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually I
So
worked with
so Spanibus is worldwide.
Spannabis is worldwide.
Damn,
Spannabis is worldwide right
that's
now.
crazy. Hey, make some noise for this
Right
man
now.
for real, because
Yeah, yeah,
that's a fucking accomplishment. Number three in the
yeah.
world for grown weed. That is crazy.
Number three, well, technically the number three team. I got to be honest about this. When it comes to it's a whole team, right? And so I was blessed or lucky to be able to compete at a young age because I was actually 17 when I created my own strain, Indigo Stars, and I wasn't able to compete until I was 18. But I had a medical marijuana card since I was 16. And so I went to my local dispensary. They closed now, but they was recently called Fuego, right? And Fuego, in Detroit, Michigan, 8 Mile, uh, they had Dark Horse Genetics there, right? It was Strawberry Diesel, and the dude there was like, if you can grow this real good, we'll see what you got, right? And I'm like, I already created my own strain. He's like, that sounds good, but it was obvious that he didn't believe that I created my own strain. He was like, you too young to even know how to do that, essentially. And so I took the Strawberry Diesel, I grew it, came back, I showed him the Strawberry Diesel, and I showed him the Indigo, and I showed him I need to get them both tested. That's when I got my first test ever, and the Indigo Stars tested at 27% in 2017, and at 27%. Third place is where that took in the Spannabis Cup. Number one was Kosher Cook, Bruce Banner at 33% THC.
Mm.
And for me to be at 27% THC growing out of a $250 grow setup and 33 out of a $2 million grow lab, I realized that 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, I'm 6% off, but I'm 1.999 million off.
No, for real. That's
Right?
crazy.
And so that led me to understand that maybe I actually do have something that's worldly talented, right? Because when I started, my OG always told me no matter what you do, be the best. I don't care if you're a janitor, you better be the coldest person with the mop. You better have the golden mop.
No,
You hear me?
facts, bro. Facts. That's dope. That's crazy. Cause to come number three in the world for anything is,
Yeah, yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
That's when it get deep. That's when it get deep. That's
Man,
when it yeah.
yeah, no facts. And I didn't talk about your indigo strain,
Oh yeah. So
and how you cultivated the name and what you did to create your strain.
yeah. So
Talk about the process of bringing them together.
so Indigo Stars. I'm an indigo child, right? Or I was told at the time that I was an indigo child based on my time of birth. We born with a higher vibration, with the ability to raise the vibration of the world, so to speak. And at the time, I was funny story. I was actually off of a rather hefty amount of psilocybin, and I was looking at the stars, and I had just got done growing and stuff. Well, not really growing, but snipping plants or just being in the grow room. And my time off, I'm looking at the stars, thinking to myself, what am I gonna name this plant? I done bred this plant. And I had a few names that I thought about naming it. I was probably gonna name it the Ronster 4000, super fire. You know, I had a few names, but none of those names really stuck with me because I felt like the herb was so powerful. It was so mind boggling. Every person that I've ever had it try it, they always come to me, bro, this is the best I've ever had. And that's very, very, that's like your grandma watching you eat some food she just cooked for you. It warms me just like how it warmed you, right?
No facts.
And so that indigo had to be from the stars. And so to combine the indigo child and the stars together, we got indigo stars. And then it went from indigo stars to my second strand, which is indigo sun. Then it was indigo moon, and my last and most final one, indigo eclipse. And that's the indigo collection. And after that, it's just me playing around with a whole bunch of different strands.
Make some noise for goddamn it, indigo. The
Yeah.
indigo collection. No, okay.
Yeah.
So do each one of your strands have a different taste or like
hmm
different?
Cultivated specifically for a different taste and feel based on the name. Indigo stars lock you in. How I felt when I was looking at the stars was the goal of achieving to give somebody else when they try indigo. Being able to lock in and feel weightless, right? To feel as if you're in the stars. Then indigo sun. What's that thing you need in the morning? Cup of Joe. America runs on what, Duncan? Nah, America run on good vibes, good energy, and good energy can come from the sun, right? And so the sun, sativa dominant, wakes you up. It can be substituted for a cup of coffee. And then the indigo moon, well, what do you like to do at night, right? Say if it's a moon out, you like to lay down under the moon, you like to chill, relax, you like to be in the couch. And that indica comes in and relaxes the body, all inflammation markers for the physical body. So say if you done worked a hard day, the indigo moon gonna make that hard day feel effortless. And then it's the indigo eclipse. Now the indigo eclipse was just a mad child of indigo sun and indigo moon because what happens when the sun and the moon get
Hey,
right?
that's hard. That's dope. That's dope. I
Yeah,
fuck
and
with that.
so indigo eclipse, slightly different flavor, but you get a hybridized effect. So it's more so which one you'll get first, right? And so with the indigo sun, you may try it and feel like you want to clean up the whole house. Or you may try it and feel like you want to relax. And then 30 minutes later, you want to clean up the whole house, right? And so that was the key. Being able to create something that didn't make people feel like cannabis will make them unproductive. But cannabis doesn't make you unproductive. Too much cannabis makes you sleepy. Just like too much running, walking, talking, reading. Too much anything is bad.
No facts. Okay, so how did you start off making your first strain? Because
Mm.
did you start with another seed and eventually develop your own? Like how did that go?
Yeah, so when I made my own strand, I started out with 3 strands. So for the sake of proprietary reasons, I won't say the third strand, but it was Durban Poison and Granddaddy Purple, right? Or Purple Master Kush or Purple OG. And so those two are also known to create cookies, right? But cookies is actually it's not Durban Poison in OG, it's lamb's bread in OG, and that's one of their big secrets. But shout out Mike from Cookies for that. Yeah, yeah, he said we can say that now. We clear for that. Yeah, that's good.
Cool.
But the coming up with it was more so understanding that I needed something different. How would I be able to enter the world doing something that's already done and it's just like everybody else, right? You want to go to the bank and get a loan, and you a barbershop, they're gonna ask you, well, what make you different from all the other barbershops? Well, I have my own strand. I have something that nobody else wants. I mean, I have something that nobody else can get without me. I literally created from nothing. That's what made me different. Because when you look at all the dispensaries out, it's very rare that a dispensary has a home strain that they grow that nobody else have. Usually they have to get a strain that has a high following that only one person has, like cookies. And then they have to get that third party work going in. And so with that being said, that's what it was for real. Being able to be different but still be great.
So you talk about you said the OG and the Granddaddy Perps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, why did you select those two strains specifically in regards to what characteristic you wanted your weed to have?
So OG is known for having anti-inflammatory properties and tasting very sweet. It's back in the 90s it was known for having a Tootsie Roll like sweetness. Right? And so the brown Tootsie Roll, not the fruity loop, fruity not the watermelon, all those other flavors. Literally just straight sweet Tootsie Roll. And the growth structure. OG grows skinny stems with fatter nugs, right? And then the Durban Poison grows skinny stems with denser nugs, but they're still fat. Crossing those together, I create a hybrid. Not too fat, not too dense, skinny stems, powerful bud. The third strand came in with the flavor and the color. Excuse me. Now, when it comes to crossing plants together, the plants absorb attributes from both. And so you got to go on what is called a pheno hunt. So if I cross OG with Durban Poison and I got 10 strands, all 10 of those strands are going to be similar, more or less like the mother or the father. One may be just like the father with slight indications of the mother, right? It may grow like the father with a floral smell and a bud structure of the mother, right? And then from there, understanding how the plants absorb the genetics, I then took that one strand I liked from the OG and the Durban Poison crosses and then crossed that with the proprietary strand. And so that third strand coming in and giving it more color, giving it more flavor, I was able to reach a a flavor profile of at least zero point 0.2 terpenes naturally grown from the plant. And so zero point 0.2 is pretty high. Zero point 0.4 would be like some of the best stuff in the world, right? But terpenes is a very small representation of everything that the cannabis plant makes. It's just that that is the smell, taste, and flavor. And so without the terpenes, it just tastes like dirt.
So what are the terpenes?
The terpenes grows inside of the trichomes, and the terpenes develop the smell, taste, and flavor. Now, terpenes is what gives all plants their smell, taste, and flavor. Actually, all plants and vegetables, anything that grows. Mangoes have what is called menadol in it, and menadol is a terpene that is also in cannabis, right? And then lemons have citrine in it. Citrine is also in cannabis. So all of the plants that have the specific terpenes that can be used in regular everyday life, cannabis grows over 400 different terpenes at a time. We just smell the top three. The top three terpenes creates the smell. That mixture and ratio creates the smell that we all begin to love and know as cannabis.
Mm, that's
Hmm.
crazy. So if I wanted to get something to taste like, let's say, lemons or strawberries, what would I do to achieve that taste?
So first, you would grow. First, me personally, this is what I would do. The microbials that are in the soil are what create the smell, taste, and flavor. When they eat, they poop. The plant eats their poop. Their
So
poop.
what are microbials?
Microbials are the things that you can't see with your eye. They super super small, and they about the size on the tip of a pin. 100,000 will live on the tip of a pin, and that right there are the things that break down the natural material around to make it bioavailable for the plant to absorb. And that's if you're not using synthetics. If you're using synthetic nutrients, it's already bioavailable.
Mm.
But you still need microbials for the terpene action. And so that's where you get stuff like mammoth pea or fish shit, right? These are two products that are actually on the market that are and have live microbials in them that will promote the growth and absorption of nutrients for your plants.
So the microbials, how do the plants receive the like how did the flavor come into play between the
Mm.
microbial and the plant?
So it's this process that happens when the microbials poo and the plants eat that specific enzyme that the microbials only they make. That enzyme is what is the catalyst to pushing towards a certain terpene production.
Okay, so
Mm.
are the microbials come from the soil. The plants absorb the microbials, and then the microbials enzymes create the terpene production.
Close, essentially, yeah. So yeah, the microbials are in the soil. They're naturally in the soil. They live in the soil. They everywhere, and you can add them in as well. Microbials or bacteria. And then when the bacteria eats the food around it, then the plant has something to eat. But the plant is not only eating the food, it's eating the enzymes released by the microbials. And those enzymes is what caused the plant to think to itself, or the plant to go, all right, we have strawberry enzymes, or the enzyme that is used in strawberry terpene production, right? And so if you look at a strawberry soil, those specific enzyme, I wouldn't say put strawberries in your soil. It's not gonna make your herb taste like strawberries, but the soil that is used for strawberries would promote a strawberry like smell, taste, and flavor to your cannabis.
Mm.
And just genetics. You can find some, say if you wanted some strawberry diesel from Dark Horse Genetics, good plug. Strawberry diesel tastes like strawberries because it has been cultivated to promote that strawberry terpene. And so yeah, that's the way to go.
Talk about the difference between sativa, indicas, and hybrids.
Ooh, so now we getting into it. All right, sativas, indicas, hybrids. Was technically is four: sativa, indica, ruderalis, and hybrids. Sativas are grown in a hotter climate at a higher altitude and a lower humidity. Indicas are grown at a lower altitude, cooler climate, and they're more bushy like. Sativas grow straight up, Christmas tree like. Indicas grow bushy. Ruderalis is the extreme genetic form of the plant that can grow in extreme conditions through snow.
What was the last one that you said?
Ruderalis.
What's that one again?
That's the genetic of the plant that can grow through extreme conditions. It is also known as an autoflower.
What does that mean?
It means the plant has been through so much genetical trauma that when it pops, when the seed is germinated, or when you put the seed in the ground, after about 45 days after you put the seed in the ground, it automatically switches into flowering without you changing the light cycle or the nutrients. And that right there is a key indication that that plant usually only have a certain amount of time to flower. So in order to preserve itself, it has to flower early. And so that's why we call them auto flowers.
So I would feel like, and it's just a guess, that those plants aren't typically the best.
Oh no.
That's the opposite.
Yeah, they're
The
not typically that good unless grown in a non stressful environment. If you was to get an autoflower, a stressed out autoflower genetic, and then grow it in a very good environment, oh, that autoflower will flourish, and then you may get some fire herb.
no, that
But
do make
you
sense.
see what I'm saying? It's really based on the grower and conditions.
So what are some popular auto flowers in the cannabis industry?
Ooh, train wreck, white widow cross train wreck, blue dream,
Mm.
Girl Scout cookie, and gorilla glue.
Oh, so them are the best. Them are the best.
Yeah. Those are the ones that I would recommend any grower to grow those. And if you put it in a good condition, you will be surprised how much and how good the quality is of those plants.
Mm.
Hmm.
So why not? Why didn't you choose to use one of those in your grow?
Because those are all not to sound bougie, but muttered down genetics. We strive for purity. Okay, no I'm playing.
Okay,
But, yeah.
that's where I was coming from when I said that I feel like they wouldn't grow the best,
Mm.
and it was simply because the fact that I mean, obviously going through stress will make you stronger, but the fact that they have to produce so early, I felt like it restricted them from going through that full process that they need to.
Right. But usually that would, but by them genetically being able to change to extreme conditions, they still are able to fully mature, fully produce good smell, flavor, everything across the board, just like a photo period would. And that right there is a key indication that it's not only a slightly different genetic makeup, it was the genetic makeup adapted in extreme areas, extreme cool, extreme heat, extreme air. And so with that being said, yeah.
So you would almost want to extrapolate some of them autoflower properties of the strong genes to mix with some of the other things. So what are
Mhm.
the cons of the autoflowers? Is it taste or is it like it's got to
A
be something
auto
bad about
flower.
it?
You don't choose. So normally,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
normally when you so say for example, most traditional growers grow a 12 and 12 light cycle, 18 and 6 light cycle, right? 18 hours on, 6 hours off, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. That's the growth cycle and the veg cycle and the flowering cycle. So if you in veg, you usually got about 18 hours on, 6 hours off. If you don't switch the light, you gonna stay in veg. You
Right.
see me? So like in theory, you can stay in veg forever, right? I've had mother plants myself for 6, 7 years that have stayed alive and grew and kept growing and
So
never
what's the
stopped.
veg state? What's
The veg state is a state where it develops its stems, its roots, and everything to be able to hold the buds. It's preparing for flowering stage because flowering stage, those buds will be strong and it'll snap that plant. The plant already knows that it's gonna grow buds, so it knows it has to be able to hold those buds as well. Hmm. Well, yeah, the biggest con is they gonna flower on their own because it's between 30 to 45 days. But sometimes I've seen autoflowers flower as early as 2 weeks. I plant it 2 weeks later, it's showing white hairs going into flower.
why is that a bad thing for you?
Because if you're growing, usually you want to get enough to consume or enough to be able to test, right? You need at least 1 gram to test at the lab. If I grow a plant and it starts to flower 2 weeks after I grow it, it won't be 1 gram. I might get 2 grams, 3 grams off of it maximum wet. And then when I dry it, then it's gonna drop down about like a point 0.6, point 0.8, right? And that's not enough to meet the counter. And so it's extremely important to be able to grow enough because if I get, say for example, I was trying to grow a whole bunch of plants, I get 10 autoflowers. 5 of them don't get more than an ounce because they all flower early, and the rest of them flowered on time, and I get what I was expecting. Not being able to reach a mark that you was expecting, that's a monkey wrench in the plan. That's not supposed to go like that.
So how are people getting like train wreck and
Hmm.
widows? What are they doing to manipulate the conditions if they on auto all the time?
So autoflowers usually run on a slightly different time. You can leave your autoflowers on 18 and 6 the whole time, and during flowering, some people would change it to 12 and 12, just like photo periods. But the plant tells you when it's ready instead of you changing it yourself. And so,
Mm.
with that being said, it's more so like you listening to what it want. And yeah,
Oh, so it's a lot more maintenance. That's
hmm
another thing too. Okay, so what are some telltale signs that you got some good weed?
Ooh, number
And
one sign. When you got the herb, s- put it to your first look at it. It should look healthy and clean, right? It shouldn't have no whole bunch of uh, uh burnt brown leaves on it. It should have some form of shininess to it. You should see those little terpenes to where like a whole bunch of itty bitty people is on the bud flashing their camera light at you. And then when you squeeze it, it should smell the same as when you smell it without squeezing it, as when you smell it when you do squeeze it. It should just be a more intense smell. And when you get that smell, breathe in and breathe out. When you breathe out, you're gonna get a slightly different smell than you did when you breathed in. Pay key attention to that. How you feel when you smell it and breathe it out is going to determine if it's good for you or not. Now, for example, most people wouldn't consume cannabis over 15% THC because they're not quote unquote smokers, right? And so, with that being said, the average person who doesn't smoke 15% THC is more than enough. The person who smokes all the time, 27% THC is more than enough. Right now, the strongest herb is about 34% THC. No one's is consistently consuming that. And so, with that being said, uh, I lost my train of thought.
telltale signs of
Yeah. Oh, right. The smell, the squeeze. When you squeeze it, it should bounce back. It shouldn't squeeze and stay flat. I mean, it's too wet. When you burn it in your ash, the ash is just specifically based on the moisture content. It has very little to do with how many nutrients is in it and all that other stuff. And so the telltale signs before smoking it is usually during the breakdown. If you have a grinder and you grind it, it should fall over like snow, right? If you ever been outside, you know how snow falls. It like rolls almost. It shouldn't be like cereal or flour or rice or nothing like that. It should be like a thickness to it, right? That's how you know it's a good production of oils or violet oils or THC CBDs or trichomes. Trichomes has everything in it. THC, CBD, terpene, all of the above. And so when it has that snowy move, that's how you know it's of a higher percentage. Then it's the smell taste, the snap taste. Yeah, and that's it. That's really the only telltale signs: how it smell, how it feel, and then it's the smoke test.
So when you say when you squeeze it and you smell it and it smell different before you get it close and when it's away, what is that determining?
So when you get the bud and you smell it and it smell real good, and you squeeze it and it smell different than that initial smell, 9 times out of 10 that cannabis has been terped, or there is a substance on that cannabis that is changing the initial smell. That is usually a key indication of something unnatural in most cases, because a lot of people that I've seen in the industry don't really know how to uh, infuse natural terpenes into cannabis, but there are a lot of people who do, and there are infused products in dispensaries. And so, with that being said, I don't usually recommend terped cannabis to the regular person because it removes the ability to appreciate the natural flavor of a plant itself, because you are now adding something that is unnatural to it or something that is not it, right? In the best case scenario, if it is terped, you will get, say for example, you have a pound, right? I would get 1 ounce of that pound, freeze it, press it, and then take the terpenes from that and put it on the other 15. But doing that, yes, it's going to smell stronger. It's going to taste stronger, whole nine, but it's not going to be different. That's the key indication. Long as it's not different, you good. You got something cool and safe.
So, um, what was the question I was about to ask? Um, when it comes to weed smell, if the smell is not loud, does that mean the weed is not good?
70% of the time, yes.
In what cases is it good?
In the case of it was dried too fast, and when you reintroduce moisture to it, the smell should then come back. But that is very rare. That is very, very rare.
Because I would say that I've had some good weed that didn't have a strong smell and it didn't look good. But when I smoked it, it was some of the best weed that I had.
Mm,
And and
ah,
I would say like, does that lean more towards like sativa or indica?
that actually oddly leans more towards your genetics. The moment when I was speaking about when you smell it and you exhale it, if you do not feel appealed to it, then that's your body repelling it, because it has the things in it that your body want. Because cannabis is one of the only plants on the planet that the human body is naturally built to consume. Every human on the planet, every animal on the planet, and most insects have what is called an endocannabinoid system, which is a subdivision to your nervous system, which is only activated by cannabis.
Mm, that's crazy.
And so genetically, if it smell good to you, that's where preference come in. What's good to you may not be good for me. You know what I mean? If you smell something that smell like mimosas, you may be like, I like this. I may be like, that make my stomach hurt. If it make your stomach hurt when you smell the bud, you for sure shouldn't be
Right.
smoking it.
No
You know?
facts. Okay, so in regards to purple weed, is purple weed better than regular weed? Is it just an aesthetic? And what do it take to get purple weed?
Purple weed. All right, so with purple weed, head slaps. Everybody in the room slap their forehead. But purple weed quite literally only means stress. There is a very, very small scenario where it being purple is a natural genetic, but 9 times out of 10 it's not. Purpling of the stems indicate a phosphorus or a potassium deficiency or toxicity or too cold of a watering or too hot of a watering. Uh, Purpling buds usually is an indication of bruising. Those buds was touched too much, or when they was growing, they were moving around each other, hitting each other too much. uh, the temperature dropped abnormally fast for a small amount of time. That'll cause yellowing, or I mean, that'll cause pinking or purpling. If I water a plant with water that's too cold, or if I put ice on the top of my soil, from the bottom of that plant all the way up is going to start to turn purple because it's getting too cold, and that's its natural reaction to defend itself. So purple herb doesn't actually mean it's better at all. It just means it went through some stress.
Mm.
It's like a banana that has no bruises and a banana that has bruises on it. Which one is better, right? I mean, it really depends on preference. Because if you blend them up and put them in a smoothie, you wouldn't know which one was which.
So, what would you say is your favorite strain of weed outside of your strains?
You got me.
And when it comes to sativas, hybrids, and indicas, what would you choose?
Ah, bar for bar hybrids. I love everything there is when it comes to the filling and relief or the consumption of the indicas and sativas. My favorite strand right now that wouldn't be my strand, I would have to give that up to Blue Planet by Beyond Top Shelf. Transition to Power, RIP. He passed a few years ago. It's one of the only plants I've ever had in my life that had blue terpenes. Like the plant was naturally blue, and that right there was like beautiful because nowadays we've seen a lot of color, food coloring on the THCA powder, turning buds blue, red, green. And that's like, you're not supposed to smoke food coloring, brother. Oh no, brother,
Yeah,
not safe, brother.
that's crazy. Um, okay. How do you feel about vaping?
Oh, so I like to call vapes cannabis vapes, right? Yeah, cannabis vapes. I like to call them a hollow high because you don't get a complete high from vapes because you lose a lot of the different terpenes, THC, CBDs. A lot of different things are lost during that conversion process from bud to vape pen due to I would have to say laziness. But if we skip past that, we understand that the entourage effect can't happen if you don't have all of the necessary ingredients. The entourage effect happens when there are multiple terpenes, cannabis, and CBDs that are acting together, creating a whole new substance inside the body. And so you may get a pen that's Blue Dream. Blue Dream is meant to be like a sativa, keep you up. You may hit it and not feel no different. And then 30 minutes later, you feel a little buzz. That's not supposed to happen. You only felt the THC that was in Blue Dream. You didn't feel the terpenes of Blue Dream that created the full effect to where when you consumed it, you were like, oh, I feel more bright. I feel uppity. You just felt normal. And so, with that being said, that's a key indication.
Yeah, that's something that I noticed when I smoke vapes. Like the difference between the vape and actual weed is like it's like a partial high.
Hmm.
It doesn't really settle in the same way that we do.
Literally, it's like no matter how much you smoke, it's not going to feel the same.
So in regards to THC and CBD, when somebody who's being introduced into cannabis, what should they choose and based on what?
Mm. I would actually recommend a person that's coming into cannabis, depending on why they use cannabis. If it's for a recreational reason, go for whatever name and smell lights you up. But if it's for medical reasons, I would heavily recommend a CBD dominant strand that would be able to help. And I wouldn't even recommend smoking it. I would actually recommend putting it into a tea because in a tea you will get more of the medical benefits. A tea with after you make the tea, then drop a teaspoon or tablespoon of oil in there, like grapeseed oil, olive oil, coconut oil, and it'll give the cannabis something to stick to because CBD and THC both need a oil or a fat to stick to for it to be bioavailable to the body. And so once you do that and you consume it, you will see inflammation markers drop exponentially. Excuse me.
I'm gonna finish it off with three more questions.
Mm.
What's the difference between medical weed and recreational weed?
My brother, there is such a big difference between them two. Yes. Medical goes under such extensive testing. You can have no pesticides, no foreign materials. You can't have no lint off your shirt. Nothing can be on medical herb. It's held at an extremely high standard to where medical herb is the cleanest herb you can get, the safest herb you can get. And that's the first and foremost. Recreational, the amount of E. coli that is allowed, the amount of bacteria that is allowed, that they let it, yeah, it does reduce the price exponentially, but it increases the health risk. And that's not really worth it to me, essentially. And so the biggest difference between recreational cannabis and medical cannabis is the cleanliness. Recreational cannabis does not have to go under such extensive processing to be able to be consumed by people because that's just it's recreational. If you do it, you're doing it of your own volition. Like how they say when you're drinking, you pour your own problems, right? And so, with that being said, the cannabis itself, mm, it's the same.
So that's crazy because they make it seem as if almost as if the weed is stronger or something. Because when you hear medical marijuana versus recreational, you thinking that it's because of the properties in it, not
Yeah.
just because the weed is being taken care of better. Like y'all just not y'all gonna make us pay extra to get access to this good weed. I get it. I know how the game go, but that's
Hmm.
crazy because that's not the that's not the shadow that's casted over it. I feel like.
Literally, and that's the thing. 98% of people who know anything about cannabis know nothing about cannabis. We can go to the highest level of cannabis. At the Spannabis Cup, I knew people who never knew nothing about hemp or never knew nothing about CBDs. They just knew they was growing this run strand and entered the Spannabis Cup, and this, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And so, with that being said, most people don't know, and that's what makes this so important because it's like once you understand the cannabis, you understand the difference. Yes, medical weed is better than recreational weed. It is better than just on the corner. The only reason it's better because you have a highly probability of it being way cleaner than anything else. For example, cannabis is consumed when consuming cannabis through smoke, it goes to your lungs, then directly to your bloodstream. There is no line of defense that can help purify any impurities and keep you from getting sick. It doesn't go through your liver like when you eat it. And you see what I'm saying? And so, with that being said, if you smoke it, whatever else is on that cannabis is going directly into your bloodstream. And it's some stuff that's not dangerous if you eat it, but if you smoke it, it'll hurt you or it'll cause highs, it'll cause negative backlash. And that is how we got extremely negative connotations between bad weed and good weed because bad weed really harm you. But the thing about it, it's not gonna harm you right then and there. You feel me? You would be smoking today, and 3 days later, your chest hurt, and you ain't even smoked that day. Hmm. Message.
No facts.
Yeah.
Now, what are some of the legal implications of smoking weed in other places?
So most places don't. So legally, you can't smoke in public, but is it enforced? Let's just say I've been to a lot of downtowns of legal states, and the police are quite lenient because when you think about it, cannabis itself is a non-violent drug or a non-violent substance, right? Because we can't, well, technically anything that changes the brain composition is a drug, blase splee, which means love is a drug, strongest stuff ever. Shout out J Cole. And so with that being said, the police don't really care that much, bro. I don't really think because I've been downtown and seen the police and I'd have been blowing, smoking real clouds, and I see them, they give me a look, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, cool, they don't care. But it's still like by it being recreational, they don't really.
It's
You have
more
your fun,
chill.
yeah.
It definitely depends on where you at, cause I done been down in Atlanta and They is not playing about that shit down there. You better not get caught with a roach in your car. You was going to jail. But no, yeah, bro, I got so many more questions for you, man. Hey, y'all, make some noise for my boy Ronnie, man.
Yo.
He did his thing.
Yeah.
Make sure y'all drop in the comments if y'all want another episode with me and Ronnie. Yeah, bro, I appreciate you being on here. This man has some of the best weed that I've ever smoked. Y'all can take my word for it. We definitely gonna have another episode, and I appreciate y'all for being here. I'm gonna see y'all next time on the 4th episode of the Way Podcast. One.
Peace.
Yeah, I really got this shit in the bag right now. Bad bitch in the front seat, car go fast right now. Smoke dope, but we low key though. Had to give him the okey doke. Like I'm so straight, I'ma just pass right now. Nigga need that bread like Peter. Everything I do for a reason. If you break that code, it's treason. Every one of my dogs, I'm bleeding. Every one of my dogs, I need them. Locked down, free that pen, I breathing. I do this shit for a reason. I don't do this shit for no reason.
What you wanna know?